In the quiet Ozark town of Gateway, Arkansas, a man sworn to protect became the thing everyone feared most. Population 450, where everybody knows everyone's name. Where Highway 62 cuts through rolling hills and whispers through small-town silence, this is the kind of place where doors stay unlocked and neighbors wave from porches. But in 2017, that trust shattered when one of their own crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. Grant Hardin wore a badge in Gateway for just 4 months. 4 months that left residents terrified in their own homes. The man appointed to serve and protect was instead pulling guns on citizens for no reason, chasing down vehicles without cause, his anger boiling over at the slightest disagreement. The city council saw what was happening. They gave him an ultimatum: resign or be fired. Hardin chose to walk away quietly, but the rage inside him never cooled. 9 months after leaving the police department on a cold February afternoon in 2017, James Appleton was driving home from his job with the Gateway Water Department. He pulled over on a rural road to keep his cell phone connection stable while talking to his brother-in-law, Andrew Tillman, who was the mayor at the time. During the conversation, Appleton mentioned a white car that had stopped behind him, then started to drive around. Suddenly, the mayor heard what sounded like a door slamming. Then nothing. Just silence on the other end of the line. Moments later, local resident John Bray was driving home from work when he spotted Appleton's white Chevy truck stopped on the roadside. Behind it sat another white car. The driver waved Bray around. As he passed, Bray recognized the man behind the wheel. It was Grant Hardin, the former police chief everyone knew. Bray drove only a few hundred yards when he heard a loud bang echo through the valley. Looking in his rearview mirror, he saw the white car accelerating quickly toward him before it turned sharply down a dirt road and disappeared. Something felt wrong. Bray turned around and drove back to the truck. Inside, he found James Appleton slumped over, shot in the head at close range. The 59-year-old father and husband was dead. When detectives arrived, Bray immediately identified the shooter. There was no mystery about who pulled the trigger. The entire town knew who Grant Hardin was. What they didn't know was how long the system had been protecting him. The investigation revealed a disturbing pattern. Hardin's law enforcement career spanned 35 years across multiple departments in northwest Arkansas, and nearly every single job ended the same way, with him being fired or forced to resign. His first position with the Fayetteville Police Department lasted less than a year. Supervisors said he struggled almost immediately before being dismissed. He moved to the Huntsville Police Department, where he lasted only 6 months before resigning under unclear circumstances. Then came Eureka Springs, where he worked from 1993 to 1996. The police chief there, Earl Hyatt, later stated bluntly that Hardin resigned because he was about to be fired for incidents including excessive force. Hyatt's assessment was chilling. Hardin should never have been a police officer at all. But department after department kept hiring him. Despite the red flags, despite the pattern, despite the warnings from previous supervisors, Grant Hardin kept getting another badge and another gun. When Gateway made him their police chief in early 2016, they had no idea they were handing authority to a man with a documented history of violence and misconduct. Within weeks, residents noticed the change. Hardin began pulling over citizens without justification, brandishing his weapon during routine encounters, responding to minor disagreements with explosive rage. The tension came to a head in the spring of 2016, during a confrontation between Hardin and James Appleton over a police car that needed repairs. Multiple witnesses later described how the two men got in each other's faces, the mutual dislike obvious to everyone watching. Appleton, who worked for the city's water department, wasn't intimidated by Hardin's badge or his temper. He stood his ground. For a man who demanded complete submission and respect, Appleton's defiance must have been intolerable. After the city council forced Hardin to resign, he took a job as a correctional officer at the Northwest Arkansas Community Correction Center in Fayetteville, about an hour south of Gateway. But he couldn't let go of what happened. He couldn't forget the humiliation of being fired, the sting of Appleton standing up to him. The resentment festered and grew until that February afternoon when Hardin followed Appleton's truck and executed him on a lonely rural road. Despite the brazenness of the crime, Hardin tried to maintain normalcy. That same evening, he took his wife and daughter to dinner at a restaurant. Security footage later captured them eating together, Hardin appearing calm and collected. At one point during the meal, he told his family that if anything were to happen to him, he wanted them to know he loved them. Hours later, as police set up roadblocks near the crime scene, they turned vehicles around to keep people away from the area. In one of those cars was Grant Hardin with his wife and daughter. Officers arrested him on the spot. In October 2017, Hardin pleaded guilty to first-degree murder and was sentenced to 30 years in prison. But the story didn't end there. When Hardin entered the Arkansas prison system, authorities collected a DNA sample as part of standard procedure. That sample was entered into the FBI's combined DNA index system, and it matched evidence from an unsolved crime that had haunted Rogers, Arkansas, for 20 years. In November 1997, Amy Harrison, a third-grade teacher at Frank Tillery Elementary School, was sexually assaulted in her classroom on a Sunday afternoon while preparing lessons for the upcoming week. The case went cold. No suspects were ever identified. For 2 decades, the rapist walked free while Harrison carried the trauma of that attack. When Hardin's DNA matched the evidence from the scene, the truth finally emerged. At the time of the assault, Grant Hardin had been a police officer in nearby Eureka Springs. The man who was supposed to protect the community had been preying on it. In February 2019, while already serving time for murder, Hardin pleaded guilty to 2 counts of rape and was sentenced to an additional 50 years. The man former prosecutor Nathan Smith described as a sociopath with no moral core was finally behind bars for good, or so everyone thought. On May 25, 2025, surveillance cameras at the North Central Unit in Calico Rock captured something extraordinary. At 2:55 in the afternoon, Grant Hardin walked through a secure sallyport dressed in what appeared to be a law enforcement uniform, pushing a loading cart. A corrections officer in the tower, fooled by Hardin's costume and demeanor, opened the gate and waved him through. By the time officials realized what happened and announced his escape 2 hours later, Hardin had vanished into the rugged Ozark wilderness. The manhunt that followed was massive. Helicopters, drones, tracking dogs, officers on horseback, and multiple law enforcement agencies scoured the rocky terrain. The FBI offered a $20,000 reward for information leading to his capture. But the same landscape that makes the Ozarks beautiful also makes them treacherous for searchers. Hardin knew these mountains. He'd grown up exploring caves and valleys that most people never see. When bloodhounds picked up his scent shortly after the escape, heavy rains washed it away within a quarter mile. Back in Gateway, fear gripped the small community once again. Cheryl Tillman, James Appleton's sister and now the town's mayor, described the news of Hardin's escape as reliving the nightmare all over again. She and other family members had testified at his trial. Hardin had seen them there. He knew who they were. The question haunting everyone was whether he would seek revenge. For nearly 2 weeks, Hardin remained at large while authorities expanded their search radius. Then, on June 6th, tracking dogs picked up a fresh scent near Moccasin Creek, roughly 1.5 miles west of the prison he'd escaped. Arkansas law enforcement and U.S. Border Patrol agents moved in. When Hardin saw officers approaching, he attempted to run but was quickly tackled to the ground. After 13 days on the run with no food or supplies, he had nothing left. His identity was confirmed through fingerprints, and he was taken back into custody. The investigation into how Hardin managed to escape revealed disturbing failures. The uniform he wore was not standard prison issue. It had either been homemade or smuggled in somehow. His job assignment in the prison kitchen may have played a role, giving him access and materials other inmates didn't have. Most troubling of all, the corrections officer who opened the gate never verified Hardin's identity. That single lapse in protocol allowed a convicted rapist and murderer to simply walk out of a medium security facility. But the deeper failure happened decades earlier, long before Grant Hardin killed James Appleton or raped Amy Harrison. The warning signs were everywhere. Supervisors documented his misconduct, his excessive force, his inability to control his anger. Yet the system kept giving him chances. Department after department looked at his resume, saw his experience, and handed him another badge without thoroughly investigating why he kept getting fired. Small-town police departments with limited resources and high turnover often struggled to conduct comprehensive background checks. The result was a dangerous man bouncing from agency to agency, his violent tendencies escalating with each new position of authority. Gateway trusted the system to protect them. They trusted that someone with a history like Hardin's wouldn't slip through the cracks. They trusted that hiring a police chief meant bringing in someone vetted and safe. That trust was betrayed not just by one man, but by an entire network of oversight failures that allowed him to keep wearing a badge for 35 years, despite being fundamentally unfit for the job. Today, Grant Hardin sits in a maximum security facility, facing additional charges for his prison escape on top of his existing 80-year sentence. The investigation continues into who might have helped him and how the security protocols failed so spectacularly. But for the people of Gateway, for Cheryl Tillman and her family, for Amy Harrison and every person whose life Hardin destroyed, no amount of prison time can undo the damage. The system that should have stopped him decades ago instead enabled him year after year, badge after badge, until the inevitable happened and innocent people paid the price with their lives and their peace of mind. The case of Grant Hardin stands as a stark reminder that small-town trust can be weaponized by those who know how to exploit it. And when oversight fails, when background checks are shortcuts, when warning signs are ignored, the consequences aren't abstract policy failures. They're real people, like James Appleton shot on the side of a road. They're survivors like Amy Harrison, carrying trauma for decades. They're communities like Gateway, learning that the person sworn to protect them was actually the greatest threat they faced. The devil was never in the Ozarks. He was in the uniform.